what is environmental justice?
I think environmental justice is a specific environment that needs justice.
Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Do you think hydroponics, asthma, and environmental justice are related?
I'm not too, I would say not really.
Well, I don't know.
What is your understanding of environmental justice?
Huh? Repeat that?
Okay.
My name is Mindy Wirth. I'm a teacher here at Q300, and I teach science, and I work with the hydroponic systems that you see behind me. Being a science teacher, one of my goals is to include as much hands-on activities as possible, and hydroponics has helped in that, because then there are days when we're planting, there are days when we're harvesting, days when we're measuring or observing, and so that has made it, I think, more enjoyable for the students. You can see this is called the VCS, stands for Vine Crop System. It's a hydroponic system, great for growing vines, fruiting crops, and flowers. You know, we were given the systems by an organization called New York Sun Works, and they've been really helpful in installing the systems and helping to maintain them, and in supporting us as we work with the students to plant things and to harvest. Ultimately is what the goal is, that each student would take some produce home and be able to enjoy it and share it with their family.
Where are you supposed to find yours? I can't find mine.
Hold it over the bucket.
Bro, guys, look at this. Yo, Max. Mine weighs so much more than yours.
It's been a very good experience being able to see the plants growing from seed all the way to full harvest.
How to shoot. Guys, you know that you're
what do you have?
lettuce.
How does it taste?
It tastes pretty good. We'll make a salad with it.
What do you have?
Basil.
How does it taste?
It's good. It smells really good too.
What do you think you're gonna make?
I don't know. I think I might cook with it because you can't really eat it by itself.
And what do you have?
I have tat soy.
And how does it taste?
Sweet.
And what do you think you're gonna do with it?
My mom's gonna do something with it.
Can you tell us about the work you do with NASA?
Yes, so I'm a research scientist at Columbia University, and I work with NASA on a project on the International Space Station called NICER, which is an X-ray telescope that is mounted on the outside of the space station.
Do you know about the hydroponic system on the ISS?
Yes. So the ISS has a setup where they grow plants in space using hydroponics. So the purpose of that is to see how plants will grow in very little gravity. And the other thing is to figure out how to grow plants on a spacecraft, because for things like when humans attempt to go to Mars.
Where else do you guys have hydroponic systems, and why are they so helpful?
It uses much less soil than standard agriculture. So it's much more efficient in terms of how much space you need to grow the same amount of food. And you can also deliver the nutrients more effectively because, like in this system, for example, you can also measure how much nutrients the plants are getting and what you need to add. So in that sense, it helps us here on Earth because, it can solve problems like, hunger and things like crop failure.
These hydroponic systems in our classroom will help contribute towards environmental justice. If so, how?
The climate is changing and a lot of places become much hotter and much drier. Then growing food in the traditional way of agriculture will not be possible, but hydroponics will allow food to still be grown.
My name's Costa. I grew up here in Astoria. I was chair of the Environmental Protection Committee in the New York City Council. The council makes the laws for the city and also plays a big role in the budget. We have to vote on the city budget, which allows me to allocate funding for lots of things, including the Hydroponic Science Lab. And I am the CEO of the Boys and Girls Club of Queens. I teach environmental science at Queens College.
What did you hope students will learn from the hydroponic systems in their school?
So when we thought about Hydroponic Science Lab, I thought about opportunities to promote greenery, to teach young people about healthy eating, healthy growing, have access to good green vegetables, and hopefully taking those recipes home and encouraging their families to eat those same types of foods, that you're going to be inspired to eat those things because you grew them.
Did you get to eat anything?
Yes, we ate some cucumbers, some tomatoes, pepper, and some lettuce.
And did you notice any difference in the taste?
Yeah, it was a lot fresher, even compared to the plants that I grown in this little garden I have at home.
What did you do with the hydroponics while you took home?
I take the cucumbers back here and I make pickles, or I just eat it fresh sometimes, make salads, and sometimes I also grow them out. Last year I got a pretty big haul, and I got basil and lettuce, and with the basil I made pizza with it. I forgot what else I did with it. The lettuce, I made myself salad. This year I'm hoping I get a bigger harvest, but the one before in this year, like that we planted in like October or something around there, since we didn't have enough space, I didn't really put mine. Mine stayed in the seedling station, and it was pretty small. I couldn't really do much with it. So when I took it home, I didn't cook it. I actually put it in a pot and grew it more.
What did you do with the hydroponics harvest you took home?
Well, I didn't, but I know it's like basil and whatnot, so I guess if I did take it home, I'd use it for pizza.
What did you do with the hydroponics harvest you took home?
I just ate it. It was a bit small because we didn't have enough space in the hydroponic system, so I decided to grow it a bit, but then later we're probably going to use it for food.
They tasted good. In fact, I have a hydroponics grown cucumber right here, and I will eat it right now.
Yum.
It tastes delicious.
my neighborhood, you have to walk at least like 20 blocks just to go to like a supermarket to get like vegetables and stuff, I guess. In order to get our produce, we have to drive to the supermarket because it's a little far. So yeah. It's like one big section clumped with supermarkets, and that's really it. So if you live not near the huge clump of supermarkets, you have to walk like a mile or 20 blocks or so just to get to the supermarket.
I got involved in a lot of what happens. I grew up here in the neighborhood, and I never had asthma. But when my son was born, he would cough a lot when he was like 2, 3 years old, and sometimes he couldn't catch his breath at a very young age. And I couldn't figure out why. And took him to the doctor and found out he had asthma. And then I kind of did research and found out this neighborhood is the #1. We provide 55% of the city's power on a given day with all the power plants that surround us. We have the Grand Central Parkway running through the middle of our community. We have a wastewater treatment plant in northern Astoria. We have garbage trucks. We have over 2,000 cars an hour go up and down 21st Street. West of 21st Street is what's called an environmental justice community. And there are asthma rates higher than the Queensboro average west of this street. And that has a lot to do with intentional environmental racism, where they put things like power plants, that huge power plants you see, that every time we turn on a light, it gets used, but the whole city uses that power plant. But the residents next to it get all the dirt and the soot and all the stuff that gets in your lungs and causes asthma. Environmental justice became very, very important to me as I understood more and learned more.
Do you know about Astoria, Queens being called Asthma Alley? Is this something that is known throughout the environmental justice community?
Yes, absolutely. In the environmental justice community, amongst activists and lawyers and advocates, the environmental conditions in New York City and the deep kinds of injustice that are taking place in New York are things that are talked about and things that I hope get more attention. When you look at any major city, unfortunately, there are these zones, what are sometimes called sacrifice zones, in which there are environmental conditions that are disproportionately impacting certain vulnerable communities or certain communities that have been historically excluded from social resources. There's an exclusion of people because of the way they look or because of their income, because they might be low income or they might be living in poverty. And in those types of conditions, unfortunately, our society will place even more challenges on those people because they don't have the political power to stop it, or they can't access the courts for a variety of reasons. And so that's what's going on in Asthma Alley. That's what goes on in other kinds of sacrifice zones. And a lot of people hope that these types of situations can change through hard work and through advocacy and through rethinking our relationship to the land and rethinking our relationship as well to each other and how we treat each other, and knowing that it's not fair and it's not right that some people have to bear the brunt of terrible environmental conditions so that other people can have wealth or resources. That's not a fair thing.
My name is Mindy Wirth, and I've worked right here in Astoria. I've been a nurse for 8 years. I'd say roughly 10 to 20% of the population that I've served is presented with asthma. So some common symptoms of asthma are bronchospasm, and that means that your bronchioles, the tubes in your chest, you bring air into your lungs, they'll constrict. So that will present as wheezing most often, and that causes a lot of anxiety, clearly, because you feel like you can't breathe.
What was one of the worst cases of asthma you've ever seen? What does that look like for patients?
Well, one of the worst cases of asthma that I've ever seen, they presented with audible wheezing, so that means that you could hear it even without the stethoscope. and it's very hard for them to breathe. And the most severe cases require intubation, which means they put a tube down a person's throat and put them on a ventilator.
Have you ever heard of Asthma Alley?
I have heard of Asthma Alley, and that's right here in the neighborhood, in this community, Astoria.
When did you find out you had asthma?
I think I found out when I had asthma when I was around 6 because I was doing tennis and I just started having a very hard time breathing.
How does it feel?
It's very, like, it's not fun, but it's very intense because when I do, like, an intense amount of running or, like, doing any sort of sports and I, like, try to go to, like, my max level, I know it's, like, at the end, my throat feels like it's closing and it gets harder for me to breathe.
When did you find out you had asthma?
I think I found out I had asthma when I was 12. I had like issues when it came to, I guess like just like running or like cardio, especially like in gym class when I was in middle school. It only really flared up when I was sick. So I was put on rescue medicine, and also pretty high like doses of steroids whenever I would get like something as simple as a cold. But now that I'm older and I have like a new care team, they've kind of come to the conclusion that it's more of something that has to be treated daily. So now I'm on like a daily, I guess like inhaler, but yeah.
How can New York City become more environmentally just?
If we start in the transportation sector, yes, that's important, but those electric cars I have to plug into the grid. We can start with buildings, which I wrote a law to reduce emissions from buildings, which is the largest emissions reduction policy ever. But when we go electrify those buildings, they have to plug into the grid. So for me, the most important thing for us to do for environmental justice is to shut down that power plant down the block. So I want that power plant to come down in my lifetime. And for us to happen, we have to build about 8,000 megawatts to 11,000 megawatts of power. So we have to build wind power, solar power, hydropower. We have to build all these renewable energy pieces.
We're looking forward to a bright, renewable energy future here in Western Queens.
With the acquisition of the site of the Astoria gas turbines, which we will transform into the Astoria Gateway for Renewable Energy.
There's sort of 3 legs to the stool that can make us very happy. Green energy, good paying jobs, and then environmental justice. And this does all 3.
For so long, the simple word of energy in Astoria has been associated with pollution. And what we are trying to do here is not just exchange renewable for fossil fuel and have the energy system work as it has been working, but rather to show that a change in the way that we generate energy is also a change in the way that we value the lives of Astorians.
What can young people like us do to help the environment?
I think at this age, just explore and think about what you love learning about, what you're passionate about, what you love talking about with other people. And as you get older, I think you'll start to naturally make connections between your passions and what the world needs. I think that we have been born into a crazy time in history, me included, where the world is changing in front of our eyes. And I think we all have an ability to play an important role to help protect each other and to protect our human rights, to protect the planet and the ecosystems that we share with one another, and to protect the fate and the destiny of future generations who haven't been born yet, but who are going to live with the consequences of our actions today. I mean, that's a deep, deep burden that we all have now. It's a deep responsibility.
How can we as students make an impact on moving New York City towards its environmental goals?
Yeah, you guys can lead that movement. You guys can be talking about these issues and why it's important to you and how it matters in your life, and how pollution and environmental injustice has hurt you, and how you hurt your friends and hurt people that you care about, and people that you haven't even met yet. And you can fight for those things and be leaders.
In the future, with the way climate change is going, it might become impossible to plant using traditional agricultural methods, because the greenhouse gases are too high, and so we'd have to monitor it ourselves in order to even grow food.
It's useful for if you don't have soil and you need to grow things, and it's also very, very useful on the ISS for like future missions to the moon and eventually to Mars.
My understanding of environmental justice is when people decide that one place doesn't need to have access to plants, fresh produce, or vegetables or fruits. And basically that causes a problem, which is environmental injustice.
Environmental justice is like if people get the nutrition they need.
In my understanding of things, well, environmental justice is where like people have like the same, it's not like a lot of congestion and traffic and pollution in one area and not enough in another, so like it's all the same.
Some people live in certain areas where they can't really do much about what the city does to their environment, so people trying to fix that now.
Environmental justice is like, yeah, I have no supermarkets around my area, so I have to walk a really long time. If you have fresh food from hydroponics, then you don't need to walk that big distance to get food.
Hydroponics are cool, and they produce great food, just like this cucumber I'm about to eat again.
Thank you.